Welcome to VESA's webinar with the Translational Genomics Research Institute, TGen. We're excited for our discussion today with the Vice President of Information Security, John Forrister. John will discuss his approach to secure data while enabling researchers to access data where and when they need it. Let's first get started with introductions. John Forrister's career spans over 25 years across telecommunications and biotechnology. He joined TGen in 2004 and has had multiple information security roles at the Institute and is currently the Vice President of Information Security. As TGen's Vice President of Information Security, he oversees the design and operation of TGen's information security infrastructure and IT-related audit and regulatory requirements. Mike Bartholomew leads customer success for VESA. He's in his 25th year of helping customers solve complex technical, business, and strategic problems. He has been focused on identity and security for the past 10 years. And my name is Monica Armand, and I'm on the product marketing team here at VESA. I'm going to discuss the challenges TGen faces when it comes to securing massive amounts of data in hybrid multi-cloud environments, and how VESA's authorization platform can help solve these challenges. And then we'll bring in John and Mike to dive deeper into TGen's strategy to secure data and maintain least privilege access to data in their hybrid multi-cloud environment. Let's get started with a little background on TGen. TGen is a pioneer in the biotechnology industry with a mission to turn breakthroughs in genetic research into medical advances benefiting patients and their families. Over the last 20 years, this research has resulted in incredible discoveries with life-changing results. Listed on the slide are just a few of the incredible breakthroughs researchers are making every day at the Institute. Using machine learning to make early detection of cancer more accessible, offering a path for late-stage cancer patients wanting to leverage their own data to guide their own care, and compiling 100,000 sequenced genomes of COVID. The work being done at the Institute is critical to advancing standards of care and improving patient outcomes for cancer, neurological disorders, and rare childhood disorders. In order to make these discoveries and for researchers to get full use of genomic data, researchers need infrastructure that enables them to work with data where it makes sense and trust that their data will be kept secure. To support the Institute's mission, researchers are working to extract valuable information from complicated and large data sets so they can better understand these diseases. But every diagnosis means computing equivalent of assembling a 3 billion piece jigsaw puzzle. It's a job that until recently would take weeks, but now it can be done in hours. Researchers are generating more data than ever before, and the data needs are expected to continue to expand. A recent study found that we'll need an estimated 40 exabytes to store the genomic sequence data generated worldwide by 2025. That's almost 1 billion DVDs of JAWS as seen in the graphic on this slide. What does this mean for TGen? TGen needs an environment that will support their current and future data needs, and maybe even more importantly, enable their researchers to access and use the data when and how they need to. TGen's goal is for researchers to be able to work with data in any environment they need to get full use of it. To achieve this goal, this meant adopting a hybrid multi-cloud environment. This gives them a solution that is dynamic and agile so they can balance keeping data secure and enabling researchers to get full use of their data. The move to a distributed environment brought new challenges for TGen's security team when it comes to securing access to data. Data previously siloed on on-premises data stores is now consolidated into the cloud and data lakes. All the data in the cloud needs strong access controls and protection. Keeping data secure and accessible in hybrid multi-cloud environments is challenging. Identity and access controls are disconnected. Until you connect them, you truly cannot secure enterprise access. Two challenges that make securing access difficult. One, the rise in the number of identities and types of identities. Human and non-human has made it really difficult to manage authorization. Organizations need to manage permissions for each identity on each data system. The breadth of actions possible is daunting. The resulting thousands of potential permutations is virtually impossible for humans to untangle. There is a significant risk of granting excessive privilege with toxic permissions that enable lateral movement and privilege escalation. The second challenge is managing permission sprawl across systems. Mapping permissions models to each other is difficult for non-experts because they lack common language. Permission structures across these systems aren't standardized. For example, the permission structures in AWS IAM are completely different than in Snowflake, which is completely different from SharePoint Online. As a result, teams are left with manually mapping all these permission structures, which can be tedious and time-consuming, and not to mention error-prone. Fine-grained authorization offers a solution to gain real control over access to all company resources, without impeding on your workforce from doing their day-to-day jobs. But it's not an easy challenge to solve. The scale of modern cloud era means that it is no longer possible to review or audit millions of permissions with a manual process. Authorization is exactly what Veza solves for. Our belief is that authorization is a truest form of identity. It's the only way to really answer the question of who can and should take what action on what data. The Veza authorization platform automates the process of finding and fixing policy violations, scanning continuously for shadow accounts, hidden permissions, and dormant access. We translate the complexity of permission structures across identity providers, apps, cloud IAM solutions, custom apps, and data systems to give our customers end-to-end visibility into how permissions are granted in simple, human understandable language of effective permissions. Veza empowers companies to understand the scope of their access permissions and dig into how users are getting and maintaining this access. Our customers come to us to address a variety of use cases, like maintaining least privilege, simplifying access reviews for audit and compliance, detecting and responding to identity incidents, and implementing data security and governance for cloud data systems. Now I'd like to bring Mike in to discuss how the Institute is balancing security versus usability to enable researchers to access data where and when they need it using Veza. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Monica. TGen is a biotechnology organization where the world's leading scientists help turn breakthroughs in research into medical advances that benefit both patients as well as their families. The work that the Institute does can lead to life or death decisions, which means that keeping data secure and available for researchers is paramount to the Institute. Here's a bit more about TGen's architecture. TGen is a hybrid multi-cloud environment. Their integrations with Veza include Azure, including Azure AD, Okta, AWS, SharePoint, and Google Cloud. The Institute has around 400 employees and is securing around 7 to 8 petabytes of data on-premise, as well as large amounts of data across the clouds. How is Veza's product making an impact at TGen? Veza makes it possible for TGen to manage cloud data, entitlements, and permissions. Specifically, Veza is standardizing IAM structures across identity and cloud providers. Veza is also bringing visibility to all identity to data relationships to understand data access. Lastly, TGen is using Veza to help keep data secure during its adoption of Okta. By having visibility into identity to data relationships during the migration, TGen is able to right-size permissions throughout the migration to prevent privilege abuse versus accumulating unnecessary permissions. And now we're going to welcome John from TGen. John, I'd like for you to tell us about your career and tenure at TGen, but first, I'd love to hear about your virtual background.
Sure, Mike. The background that you're looking at is actually a picture of one of the lab benches that we have at the Institute. This is one of the benches where sequences would be prepped prior to being sequenced and loaded into the supercomputing environment.
That's awesome. So John, tell us about your career and tenure at TGen.
Well, I started at TGen in 2004 as an information security engineer. My first primary project with the Institute was actually moving us into the building that we're in today. And since then, I have worked my way up the ladder to be the VP of Information Security.
That's awesome. I know the Institute is complex. Can you talk about the different types of identities that you have to manage at TGen?
There's a lot to that. It's a really good question. We have most companies have, part-time employees, full-time employees, and we have those as well, but we also have a large number of interns, paid externships, joint appointments, joint faculty. Not everybody that works at the Institute is actually a paid employee. And so it creates some interesting challenges when we start needing to onboard individuals from 4 or 5 different colleges or research institutes to work on a project.
And you've got some massive data requirements at the Institute, correct?
We do, and those data requirements are actually pretty outsized for an organization of our size. We have approximately 7 or 8 petabytes of spinning disk on the premises today, and we've just gotten done installing a new sequencer that can actually produce 14 terabytes of data across a 3-day run when running at full capacity.
So I think you talked about how just the sequencing of an individual DNA can generate 25 to 30 gigabytes of data per sequencing. The cost of sequencing has dropped dramatically over the decades, and I believe it's now approaching something around $500. So what's the implication of making this type of research more accessible?
The implication of making the research more accessible and dropping the time to actually do the sequencing is that it makes it much easier to move that data from the research institute into the medical facility, where a doctor can use it to make real-time decisions pertaining to a patient's health. The other implication there is that the more genomes we sequence, the more data we generate. And as the technology improves, the amount of data per sequence that's run also increases dramatically.
So we talked to our customers at Veza about the unique challenges of securing their businesses. TGen is actually a research institute. So tell us about what makes securing a research institute unique.
There's a few components to what makes that data unique. The first part is that our trade secrets, in a lot of cases, when our research is concluded, will actually release the data sets to the public, either via journals or, NIH has recently mandated long-term data sharing of raw research data. And so we have a confidentiality requirement with respect to that data, but a lot of times it's time limited. So when we look at when TGen looks at information security, we look at it in three different components. We have the confidentiality component, which most people understand. That's keeping secret things secret. We have the integrity component, which is ensuring that the data that the researchers generate coming off of a sequencer, for example, is the data that they're actually running through their high-performance computing pipelines or our supercomputing pipelines. And then we have the availability component. Our researchers have to be able to access that data when they need it so that they can make decisions very, very quickly and very accurately. We refer to that in industry as the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Where TGen differs a little bit is that our focus in many cases is more on the integrity and the availability aspects of that data than the confidentiality. Confidentiality is still a huge part of it, but we have to be cognizant of all 3 components.
So John, when it comes to meeting the availability requirement, what were you looking for as far as a tool that would help, the researchers have access to the data that they needed to get their jobs done, but also meeting the principle of least privilege?
The single pane of glass has been an IT holy grail for as long as I've been in IT, and it's very, very rare to see it. I simply hadn't seen a product that offered this level of functionality on the market. It was still very young. It was still very raw. And Veza has been a really good partner in terms of, I'd provide feedback. A couple of weeks later, I'd get a phone call saying, "Hey, we've implemented this. Can you take a look at it?" And so, being a smaller organization, it's rare that we get the opportunity to get in on the ground floor with an organization like Veza and actually provide guidance into what we think that the platform should look like.
Great. So you talked about the really large on-premise storage footprint, but can you tell us about TGen's cloud transformation, and why is keeping data secure in the cloud critical to enabling accelerating research at the Institute?
Sure. Well, the volume of data that we work with at the Institute actually makes it fairly difficult to move into the cloud. But our cloud components or our cloud initiatives, our goal is for a researcher to be able to work with the data in any particular environment they need to be able to. So if Amazon is really good at one aspect of a computing pipeline, we want them to be able to work with it there. If Google has another component, we want them to be able to work with the data in that environment. But when we talk about shuffling around terabytes of data, it gets to be that turns into a limiting factor in a lot of cases. So we have to be very, very cognizant of how we do this. Also, when we work with multiple cloud-based platforms, we also have to navigate their identity and access management structures. And prior to working with Veza, I had not seen a platform that allowed me to look at a Microsoft identity and access platform, a Google IAM platform, and an Azure IAM platform, all on the same pane of glass in the same console. Veza allows us to keep track of who has access to what information in a consistent and coherent manner. And it allows us to ensure that the scientists that need access to that data, going back to the availability component, don't accidentally lose access to data when it's moved between multiple platforms.
Well, that's great. So you've talked about how you have a hybrid environment, both on-premise and in the cloud, multi-cloud. Has managing a hybrid environment created new challenges or unique challenges for you and your team?
It certainly has. Our IT staff is a fairly small shop. We have approximately 20 full-time IT staffers. And so we need to be able to maintain with those individuals all of those environments. And so and it's difficult to be an expert in all of those platforms. So being able to have a read-only view of the entire environment, it lets us track changes across the multiple platforms. We can track permissions changes, permission removals, user additions, in a way that, technically speaking, we could do on a per platform basis previously, but haven't been able to accomplish centrally previously. When we're talking a small and limited group of individuals maintaining that data, the fewer places we have to go to look for it means it's less likely for data to slip through the cracks.
So John, what was your Veza aha moment?
So the aha moment with Veza was the end-to-end view of data across both on-premise systems, cloud providers, identity providers, as well as SaaS and custom web applications. And that's true for on-premise as well as off-prem environments. We're still in the process of integrating Veza with our on-prem software suites. But as we do that, it's a very good complement to our identity and access management platform to allow for a sanity check and safeguards around user application provisioning.
So how has Veza helped your team accelerate the adoption of cloud tools?
So we're actually in the process of migrating to Okta for identity and access management. We've got approximately 125 applications migrated so far, and we haven't really hit most of the heavy hitters in the enterprise environment. So one of the things I've heard consistently is that when companies when they initially make that migration from an on-prem Active Directory infrastructure or an Azure AD infrastructure into Okta, it becomes very easy to build yourself a mass of permissions that are incorrect, either overly permissive or under permissive. And so one of the big use cases for us is utilizing Veza to ensure that our employees and our staff members are properly permissioned as we make that migration.
John, you talked about the small but mighty IT team of 20 at TGen. The information security team, as you've talked about, is just 3 individuals, including yourself. A lot of our customers come to Veza, looking to do more with less and reduce the amount of manual work on their teams. Can you talk about the impact that Veza has had on your team and the processes that it needs to do when it comes to securing data at the Institute?
Software as a service application sprawl much more manageable. We've got the ability, previously, if I have 5 applications, I've got to have someone looking at 5 different administrative consoles. It takes a while. If you're not an expert in each of them, it's very easy to miss something. With Veza, we can present that on a single pane of glass to a single individual. They don't need to have administrative access to the various platforms because they have a read-only view that's aggregated across each of those SaaS platforms by the Veza console. And so it becomes a lot easier to have a single person or a couple of people take a look at a wide swath of software applications and make sure that the permissions that are assigned to individuals are correct. When you only have to go to one location to look at that, when you can use one reporting engine to watch administrative user counts across multiple platforms, we're just we're less likely to miss something. We're much less likely to miss something as we go about our day-to-day business, just because we're human. Being able to keep all of that aggregated and being able to build those reports automatically, we'll send certain notifications into Slack channels so that they can be actioned immediately. It's been a real game changer in terms of working with off-premise software applications.
So, John, you and I have talked about the criticality of the Institute and its work. How does Veza support the research and the mission of the Institute?
Well, the mission of the Institute is to take translational research and move it from the bench to the bedside. We work on a wide variety of tumors and complex diseases. And if you're an adult in the United States, chances are excellent that you know somebody who is impacted by one of our areas of study. TGen's partnership with Veza has really been not necessarily a researcher focused area. It's been on the backside where we've been able to silently, basically by making provisioning more consistent, our researchers have to spend less time interfacing with IT, and they can be off doing what it is that they're really good at, which is figuring out how to cure these diseases and how to manage these diseases. As the partnership with Veza increases, the plan is going to be to start allowing researchers to do permissions checks, right? Veza's got the ability to provide audit reports. If we have a primary investigator and someone leaves their lab, we'll be able to provide them a periodic list of individuals with access to that data and let them self-remediate if we've got either, someone should have had permissions removed or didn't, or someone needs access and we'll be able to give them the ability to grant that. All of that it is great from a researcher perspective because it removes that friction. But then we also have our annual audits. And as an information security professional, having the ability to provide those types of reports in a read-only format to an auditor to demonstrate permissions reviews, for example. Really, it's a wide variety of capabilities that Veza provides us.
Thank you, John and Mike. I really enjoyed this conversation and getting to hear how Veza enabled TGen to secure their data in a hybrid multi-cloud environment and to maintain least privilege. I want to thank John for joining us for this discussion and sharing more about TGen's work to improve lives with groundbreaking genomic research. If you would like to learn more about Veza and our authorization platform for identity-first security, please visit us at veza.com to schedule a demo or email us at sales@veza.com. Thank you.